Welcome back to CBS Mornings. We are remembering the life and career of NBA Hall of Famer Bill Russell. The Boston Celtics legend died peacefully yesterday. He was 88 years old. Russell won 11 NBA championships and 5 MVP awards. And let's not forget, he was also the NBA's first black head coach. He was not only a champion on the court, but also a champion of civil rights, marching with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the 1960s. We spoke with Russell late last year in one of his last and final TV interviews.
Basketball hadn't seen anything like Bill Russell before. When Russell jumped, Russell soared. The kid from Monroe, Louisiana, who nobody wanted on their team because of the color of his skin, he redefined what the sport could be and eventually ended up being the teammate no one could play without.
Bill, this must have been a great win for you.
Exactly.
Russell catapulted the Celtics and the city of Boston skyward in the 1950s and 60s, winning titles and breaking barriers, at a time when keeping your dignity as a black man in America was easier said than done.
So we're sitting here in Boston at the Garden. You helped bring glory here, 11 championships here. What does it feel like to be here on this court?
I never was comfortable playing for the Celtics because the #1 paper was the Boston Herald, and they didn't like the idea of the NBA team having black players.
You brought championships here in a time when it was hard to be a black man. Was it difficult to be celebrated on the court, but then off of it, not treated equal?
First of all, was never separated on the court. When I got there, the star was Bob Cousy.
Watch Boston's Bob Cousy.
No matter what I did, Cousy was the star.
Bill Russell, another Celtic, taps it in.
I remember I had a game where I had 25 points, 25 rebounds, 10 blocks, and the Boston Herald said I was lucky I got to play with Cousy.
I'm not a basketball player. I am a man who plays basketball. Bill Russell, the man, is someone who stood up for the rights and dignity of all men.
Bill Russell wasn't just an icon for basketball fans to rally behind on the floor of the Boston Garden on any given night.
9 top Negro athletes meet with Cassius Clay.
He was an icon for Black America, using his profile to highlight racism and inequality. Here with Muhammad Ali and other top black athletes in 1967, backing Ali's decision refusing the Vietnam War draft. At the march alongside Dr. King in Washington.
Do you remember in Kentucky where you and your teammates set out because they refused service at a restaurant?
Yeah.
At that time, why did you feel like it was important to do that?
Well, things are part of our preparation for the game. The team would have dinner together, and I had a couple of teammates from Kentucky, and they were going to have a separate pregame meal. So I told the coach, I'm not going to play tonight. He said, why not? I said, because of that.
Later that month, this letter found its way to Russell's mailbox. It was from Jackie Robinson, who broke Major League Baseball's color barrier more than a decade earlier, thanking Russell for boycotting the game in Kentucky.
Jackie was much more to him than most people knew. They just knew he was the first black player in the major leagues. I'm doing good, okay? But they didn't know he was probably the most intelligent baseball player in baseball.
Wow.
And Jackie would not take anything off anybody.
I tried to get as many as him. I couldn't get there.
Which championship was the most special to you? Was it the first one or was it the last one?
The first year I was player coach and we won the championship.
First black coach in the NBA. Is that right?
Yeah.
And you won as a player and a coach.
Yeah. Well, you got to understand something. My motivation was to make myself acceptable to my folks. I never felt like I was making a contribution. I was just doing the best I could.
Former President Obama paid tribute to Russell on social media. He wrote, "As tall as Bill Russell stood, his legacy rises far higher, both as a player and a person. Perhaps more than anyone else, Bill knew what it took to win and what it took to lead. On the court, he was the greatest champion in basketball history. Off of it, he was a civil rights trailblazer. Those are perfectly put words by former President Obama. You know, he's such a legend. Yeah. He accomplished so much on the court, but that pales in comparison to who he was off of it.
Right. And when, at the time, when players like Bill Russell had a lot more to lose, it's much easier now, I would argue, in 2022.
Agreed.
Than it was back when Bill Russell and Jackie Robinson and Muhammad Ali and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar were playing. And Michael Jordan himself released a statement when he set an example for every black player that came into the league, including me, Michael Jordan's
And
words.
not just the players. I look at this table right now and I think, if not for people like Bill Russell, you know, there was a time we're putting 3 African Americans on television, national television, on a morning show. Just
You're right about
wouldn't
that.
be talking about it.
And I have to say this, and I'll be honest. When these young players come in the league and they're blessed with everything, they're making millions, they're praised for what they do in their sport, and they refuse to use their voice and their platform for what's right, I think it's quite cowardly. Because you had men and women doing it in a time where it was tough because of sometimes their life was at risk.
Right.
Just because they stood up for what they believed in. So a lot of young players, they should look at individuals like Bill Russell. He will be remembered, and we'll talk about him a little bit later in the show as well.